Introduction. In 1908, a man named Frederick Winslow Taylor stood in a dusty factory in Philadelphia. He held a stopwatch in one hand and a notebook in the other. He wasn't a mean man, but he was very, very focused. He spent his days watching workers move pieces of iron and coal. He timed every single step they took. He measured how far they bent their backs and how many seconds it took to lift a shovel. Taylor believed there was only one best way to do any job. He thought that if he could map out every movement, he could turn a messy factory into a perfect machine. He didn't care about how the workers felt or how their brains worked. He only cared about the clock. He once said that in the past the person came first, but in the future the system must come first. This man never meant to become the villain in your story. He just wanted things to be fast and tidy. But Taylor's ideas spread far beyond the factory walls. They crawled into our schools, our offices, and eventually our kitchens and closets. Because of him, the world decided that being good meant being like a machine. It meant following a strict schedule, putting things away in alphabetical order, and never losing your keys. If you have a brain that works a little differently, an ADHD brain, you have spent your whole life trying to live in Frederick Taylor's world. You have tried to use his stopwatches and his best ways. You have bought the planners he would have liked, and the storage bins that look perfect on a shelf. But for you, the system never seems to work. Instead of feeling like a smooth machine, you feel like a broken one. The wall you can't see. You know the feeling of standing in the middle of a messy room and having no idea where to start. It isn't that you are lazy. In fact, you might be the hardest working person you know. You spend so much energy just trying to act normal that you are exhausted before the day even begins. When you look at a pile of mail on the kitchen table, you don't just see paper. You see a mountain. You see the bill you forgot to pay, the invitation you didn't answer, and the shame of all the times you let someone down. Scientists call this the wall of awful. It is an emotional wall built out of all your past failures. To a person without ADHD, picking up a piece of mail is a 5-second task. To you, it feels like trying to climb a cliff with no ropes while wearing a heavy backpack. Standard organizing advice tells you to just do it. They say to put things back where they belong. But those experts don't understand that for your brain, a boring task can feel like actual physical pain. Your brain is hungry for a chemical called dopamine. This chemical is like the go juice for your mind. It helps you focus and get things done. In an ADHD brain, that juice is often running low. When you do something exciting, like starting a new hobby or solving a big problem, your brain gets a big splash of dopamine. But when you have to fold socks or file a tax form, the juice runs dry. Your brain shuts down to protect itself from the boredom. This isn't a character flaw. It is biology. You have been fighting your own biology for years, trying to fit a round brain into a square hole. The promise of a different path. This book is not going to tell you to try harder. It is not going to give you a 20-step routine that you will follow for 3 days and then forget forever. We are going to stop trying to be the perfect machines that Frederick Taylor wanted us to be. Instead, we are going to build a home that actually likes you back. By the time you finish these pages, you will stop feeling like a failed adult. You will learn how to set up your space so that it supports your brain instead of fighting it. You will become the architect of a low-friction life. Imagine waking up and knowing exactly where your keys are because they are sitting on a bright yellow hook exactly where you naturally drop them. Imagine a kitchen where you can actually find the snacks before they go bad. Imagine a home where doom piles don't take over your life, and where you have the energy to do the things you actually love. We are going to use strategies that account for executive function fatigue. That is a fancy way of saying your brain gets tired of making choices. We will learn how to design for point of performance. This means putting the things you need exactly where you use them, even if a professional organizer would think it looks wrong. If you always take your pills in the kitchen, that is where they should live, not hidden away in a bathroom cabinet you never open. You are about to learn that good enough is often better than perfect. You will find out how to survive the days when your energy is low without your whole house falling apart. You are going to give yourself permission to be different. Why this works? The ideas in this book aren't just guesses. They are based on how the brain really works. We will look at history to see how some of the greatest minds in the world struggled with the same things you do. We will see how they found ways to be brilliant, even when they were messy. You can trust this approach because it doesn't ask you to change who you are. It asks you to change your environment. We know that the traditional way of organizing fails neurodivergent people because it relies on memory and boring routines. This system relies on visual cues, physical ease, and self-compassion. I have seen these strategies turn chaotic, shame-filled lives into calm, functional ones. It doesn't happen by magic, and it doesn't happen overnight. It happens by making small, smart changes that add up. You don't need a new personality. You just need a better set of tools. Meeting Maya. To see how this works in the real world, we are going to follow the story of Maya Rodriguez. Maya is 34 years old and lives in a sunny one-bedroom apartment in Austin, Texas. She is a freelance graphic designer, which means she is creative, witty, and very good at her job. She also has a very energetic terrier named Pixel, who likes to hide her socks. On the outside, Maya looks like she has it all together. But if you walked into her apartment at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday, you would see a different story. Maya is currently standing in her kitchen, staring at a mountain of mail on her dining table. She hasn't eaten a meal at that table in 3 months because it is covered in doom piles, those random stacks of papers, half-finished craft projects, and things she meant to return to the store. Because the table is full, she eats her dinner on the couch while Pixel begs for scraps. Her studio is a corner of her living room, but it is so cluttered with old sketches and coffee mugs that she often ends up working from her bed. This makes her back hurt and her brain feel fuzzy. Just this morning, she lost her keys for 20 minutes. She was late for a meeting with a big client, and the whole time she was driving, she was crying. Maya thinks she is fundamentally lazy. She thinks that if she just bought the right expensive planner or enough clear plastic bins, she would finally be fixed. She feels like a child in an adult's body. Right now, she is looking at a $50 late fee notice for a water bill she forgot to open. She feels defeated. She is so exhausted by the mess that she decides to go to bed early, just to escape the sight of it. Maya doesn't know it yet, but she isn't the problem. Her apartment is just built for someone else's brain. Over the next 20 chapters, we are going to help Maya and you rebuild that space. The journey ahead. We are going to start by looking at the science of the dopamine clutter connection. You will see why your brain loves new hobbies, but hates finishing them. We will meet Leonardo da Vinci, a man who was a genius but left hundreds of projects unfinished. He will help us understand that a messy mind can also be a brilliant one. Next, we will talk about why traditional organizing always fails you. We will look at Benjamin Franklin, a man who tried to be perfect and failed, and why he eventually decided that a speckled axe was better than a shiny one. This is where we will learn about the wall of awful and how to climb over it. We will learn the power of visual cues. We will see how Florence Nightingale used signs and colors to save lives in a hospital, and how you can use those same tricks to stop losing your keys. We will explore point-of-performance design, which means making your home work for your natural habits instead of fighting them. We will tackle the big problems like how to handle clutter blindness, so you actually see the mess before it becomes a mountain. Why body doubling, having someone else around, makes it easier to clean. How to manage the digital avalanche of emails and open tabs. The secret to a dopamine-friendly wardrobe that doesn't end up in a pile on the chair. We will even look at the doom box, those boxes you moved from your last house and still haven't opened. We will learn how to process them without the pain. By the end of this book, you won't just have a cleaner house. You will have a new way of looking at yourself. You will see that you aren't broken. You are just a different kind of thinker. You will learn to treat yourself with the same kindness you would give to a friend. The goal isn't to have a home that looks like a magazine. The goal is to have a home that feels like a sanctuary. A place where you can breathe, create, and rest. A place where the system works for you, so you don't have to work for the system. Frederick Taylor and his stopwatch can stay in the past. Your future is about to get a lot more colorful, a lot more flexible, and a lot more peaceful. Let's begin. Chapter 1: Decoding the Dopamine Clutter Connection. In the year 1519, an old man with a long silver beard sat in a quiet room in France. His hands, which had once painted the most famous faces in the world, were now stiff. Around him lay thousands of pages of notes. There were drawings of flying machines that never flew, maps of rivers that were never moved, and sketches of human hearts that no one else had seen. This man was Leonardo da Vinci. As he felt his life coming to an end, he picked up a pen one last time. He didn't write about his fame or his money. Instead, he wrote a question that sounded like a cry for help: tell me if anything ever was done. It seems impossible that one of the greatest geniuses in history felt like a failure. But Leonardo lived in a constant state of almost finished. He was a man who saw everything, wanted to do everything, but struggled to finish almost anything. He was the king of the half-done project. If he lived today, doctors might say he had ADHD. He didn't have a focus problem. He had an everything is interesting problem. His brain was a Ferrari with bicycle brakes. The Ghostly Painting of Florence. To understand why your kitchen table is covered in mail, and why you have 4 half-knitted sweaters in a closet, we have to go back to Florence in 1481. Leonardo was a young man then, and he was the talk of the town. A group of monks at a place called San Donato a Scopeto wanted a massive painting for their church. They wanted a scene called The Adoration of the Magi. This was a huge deal. It was the kind of job that could make a painter rich for life. Leonardo said yes. He promised the monks it would be the best thing they had ever seen. For a few weeks, he was on fire. He made sketch after sketch. He planned out the people, the horses, and the ruined buildings in the background. You can almost feel the energy in those early drawings. His brain was flooded with the newness of the project. But then, something happened. The new feeling started to wear off. Leonardo began to get distracted. He started wondering how birds stayed in the air. He started drawing gear systems for clocks. He spent hours watching how water swirled around a rock in a stream. To his brain, the mystery of a bird's wing was suddenly much more sparkly than the painting he had promised to finish. The monks waited. 1 year passed. Then 2. They visited his studio and saw a giant wood panel. It had some brown paint on it. It had some ghostly outlines of people. But it wasn't a finished painting. It was a doomed pile of ideas. Eventually, the monks gave up. They hired another artist to do the job. Leonardo moved on to Milan, leaving the unfinished mess behind. If you look at that painting in a museum today, it is still unfinished. You can see the places where Leonardo's mind just stopped. It wasn't because he was lazy. He was working harder than anyone else in Florence. He just wasn't working on the thing he was supposed to be doing. He was chasing a chemical in his brain that he couldn't name. We call that chemical dopamine. The rat and the lever. For a long time, people thought dopamine was the reward chemical. They thought you got a hit of it when you ate a cookie or won a game. But in 1954, 2 scientists named James Olds and Peter Milner discovered something much weirder. They were working in a lab with rats. They put a tiny wire into a specific part of a rat's brain. They set up a lever in the cage. If the rat pushed the lever, it would get a tiny zap of electricity in that spot. The scientists thought the rat would like the zap and push the lever every now and then. They were wrong. The rat didn't just like the lever. The rat became obsessed with it. The rat stopped eating. It stopped drinking water. It stopped sleeping. It just stood there, pushing the lever over and over, sometimes 2,000 times an hour. The rat wasn't pushing the lever because it felt good. It was pushing the lever because it felt like it was about to feel good. Dopamine is the seeking chemical. It's the brain's way of saying, "Ooh, look at that. That looks interesting. Go get it." It's the itch that demands to be scratched. In a typical brain, the dopamine levels are like a steady stream. It helps you stay focused on a task until it's done. But in an ADHD brain, that stream is more like a leaky faucet. Sometimes it's a tiny drip, leaving you feeling bored and foggy. Other times, someone turns the handle all the way, and you get a fire hose of energy for a brand new hobby. This is why you can spend 6 hours researching the best kind of soil for a garden you haven't even dug yet, but you can't find the energy to put a single dish in the dishwasher. The garden is new. The garden is interesting. The garden is a dopamine lever. The dishwasher is just a dishwasher. Maya and the receipts of dopamine. Maya Rodriguez sat in her living room in Austin, Texas, feeling like that rat in the lab. Her dog, Pixel, a terrier with way too much energy, was nudging a tennis ball against her foot. Maya didn't notice. She was staring at her dining table. Maya was a freelance graphic designer. She was smart, funny, and very good at her job. But her apartment didn't look like a smart adult lived there. It looked like a craft store had exploded. On the left side of the table was a pile of expensive linoleum blocks and carving tools. She had bought them 3 months ago, after seeing a cool video on the internet. She had spent 2 days watching how-to videos and another $100 on supplies. She had carved exactly one small flower, and then the spark had died. Next to the carving tools was a stack of blank journals. She had a plan to become a person who wrote her thoughts down every morning. She had used the first 3 pages of one journal. The other 5 journals were still in their plastic wrap. "I'm just a hoarder," Maya whispered to Pixel. "I'm a lazy hoarder who likes to waste money." Maya was paying what we call the novelty tax. Every time her brain felt that dopamine drought, that low, bored, heavy feeling, she went looking for a lever. Buying the carving tools felt great. It felt like a fresh start. It felt like she was becoming a new, more interesting version of herself. But once the tools were in her house, the newness was gone. The project became work. And without a steady stream of dopamine to keep her going, she couldn't climb the wall of awful to actually finish it. Her doom piles weren't just piles of trash. They were receipts for dopamine hits she had already spent. The interest-based nervous system. Most of the world runs on an importance-based system. If a task is important, like paying a bill or finishing a painting for monks, most people can just do it. They might not like it, but their brains give them enough steady energy to get through it. But if you have ADHD, your brain doesn't care about important. It cares about interest. Is it fun? Novelty. Is it new? Challenge. Is it a puzzle to solve? Urgency. Is it due in 10 minutes? Dr. Russell Barkley, a famous researcher, calls this time blindness. People with ADHD often feel like there are only 2 times, now and not now. If a task is in the not now category, like a bill that isn't due for 2 weeks, it's invisible. It doesn't exist. It doesn't trigger any dopamine. But if a task is now, like a fire in the kitchen or a client calling to ask where their design is, the brain panics and dumps all the dopamine at once. This is why many ADHDers are great in an emergency, but struggle to fold laundry. Laundry is never an emergency until you have 0 clean socks. Leonardo da Vinci lived his whole life in the now. When he was interested in a bird's wing, that was the only thing in the universe. The painting for the monks was not now. It was yesterday's news. It was a dopamine dead zone. The problem with traditional organizing. This is why traditional organizing advice feels like a slap in the face. The books tell you to just spend 15 minutes a day tidying. They tell you to touch every piece of paper once. They tell you to make a schedule and stick to it. That advice works great if your brain has a steady stream of dopamine. But if your brain is a dopamine seeker, a 15-minute tidying routine is the most boring thing on earth. It feels physically painful. It's like being told to walk across a desert with no water just to pick up a single pebble. When Maya tried these methods, she failed. And when she failed, she felt shame. She thought she lacked willpower. But willpower is a finite resource. If you use all your willpower just to put away your shoes, you have none left to do your actual job or be a nice person to your dog. We have to stop trying to fix our brains to fit the systems. We have to start building systems that fit our brains. The discovery of functional chaos. Maya decided to try something different. Instead of looking at her messy table and feeling guilty, she started to look at it like a scientist. She looked at the linoleum carving tools. "Okay," she said out loud. "I'm not doing this right now. My brain is bored with this. But I might want to do it again in 6 months when the new feeling comes back." Instead of forcing herself to finish the carving project, which felt impossible, she did something radical. She gave herself permission to stop. She got a clear plastic bin. She put all the carving tools and the half-finished flower inside. She didn't hide it in the back of a dark closet, because she knew if she couldn't see it, it would cease to exist. She put it on a shelf where she could see the tools through the clear plastic. She labeled the bin, Dormant Project, Lino Cutting. Suddenly, the table looked a little better. But more importantly, Maya felt a little better. She wasn't a failure for not finishing. She was just a person whose brain had moved on to a different interest. By labeling it dormant, she was telling her brain, it's okay to rest. We'll come back when the dopamine returns. The aha moment. The secret to ADHD-friendly organization is realizing that clutter is often just unmade decisions. Every item in a doom pile is something your brain doesn't know what to do with. Should I keep this? Where does it go? Does it need a stamp? Because those questions are boring, your brain skips them. It's like a computer that has too many tabs open and starts to freeze. Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks were a way of keeping his tabs open. He didn't try to organize them by subject. He just wrote everything down as it came to him. He accepted that his mind was a giant swirling web of ideas. He didn't have a filing cabinet brain, he had a search engine brain. When we stop fighting the way our brains seek dopamine, the wall of awful starts to get shorter. We stop trying to be the person who never makes a mess. Instead, we become the person who knows how to clear the mess when the energy returns. Maya looked at her table again. It wasn't perfect. There were still stacks of paper and a stray sock. But the carving tools were gone. The shame receipt was tucked away. Pixel dropped the ball again, and this time, Maya picked it up and threw it across the room. "Good boy," she said. She felt a tiny spark of something. It wasn't the huge fire of a new hobby, but it was a quiet, steady glow. It was the feeling of being in control of her own space, even if just for a moment. Your first step, the project audit. The biggest lie we tell ourselves is, I will finish this tomorrow. For an ADHD brain, tomorrow is a magical land where we have infinite energy, perfect focus, and no distractions. But tomorrow never actually comes. There is only now. If you want to break the dopamine clutter connection, you have to be honest about your now. You probably have 3 or 4 things in your house right now that are dopamine receipts. Projects you started when the spark was bright, but that are now just sitting there making you feel bad. Today you aren't going to clean. You aren't going to organize. You are just going to do a project audit. Find one half-finished thing. It could be a book you're halfway through, a craft project, or a deep cleaning of a drawer you started and then abandoned. Ask yourself, is this giving me dopamine right now? If the answer is no, stop trying to force it. Decide its status. Is it active, you are actually going to touch it in the next 48 hours, or is it dormant, you like it but your brain is bored with it for now? Move the dormant stuff. Put it in a box or a bag. You don't have to throw it away. Just move it off your active surfaces, like your desk or kitchen counter. By doing this, you are lowering the novelty tax. You are clearing the visual noise that tells your brain you are a failure. You are making room for the next big idea. Leonardo da Vinci never finished the Adoration of the Magi. But because he moved on, he eventually painted the Mona Lisa. Because he didn't let the shame of one unfinished project stop him, he changed the world. Your unfinished things aren't failures. They are just steps on the way to the thing that will finally make you say, "Yes, I did that." Chapter 2: Why does traditional organizing always fail you? Roughly 80% of people who spend a full weekend rage cleaning their entire home find that the mess returns to its original state in less than a week. We have all been there. You reach a breaking point where the piles of mail and the mountain of laundry feel like they are closing in on you. You spend 12 hours scrubbing, sorting, and buying matching bins. You feel like a new person for exactly 48 hours. Then a Tuesday happens. You come home tired, you drop your bag on the floor, and by Friday, the system has completely collapsed. This cycle is so common that we often think it is a personality flaw. We assume we are just lazy, or that we lack the discipline that other people seem to have. But the truth is much more interesting. The systems we are trying to use were never designed for our brains. They were designed for a very specific type of person who lived over 100 years ago, and they haven't changed much since. The man who tried to be perfect. In 1726, a young man in Philadelphia decided he was tired of being a mess. He was 20 years old, full of big ideas, and incredibly frustrated with his own habits. He was brilliant at writing and inventing, but he was terrible at keeping his desk tidy. His name was Benjamin Franklin. Franklin is famous today for flying a kite in a storm and helping start a country, but his private journals show a man who felt like he was constantly failing at life. He decided that the only way to fix himself was to achieve moral perfection. He didn't just want to be a better person, he wanted to be a perfect machine. He sat down and made a list of 13 virtues. These were things like silence, frugality, and industry. But the one that gave him the most trouble was order. His rule for order was simple: let all your things have their places, let each part of your business have its time. To track his progress, Franklin made a little book. He drew a table with 7 columns for the days of the week and 13 rows for his virtues. Every time he failed to keep something in its place or missed a scheduled task, he would use a pen to put a little black dot in the book. He thought that if he could just see his failures on paper, he could shame himself into being organized. Franklin spent years carrying this book around. He would look at the black dots and feel terrible. He tried to follow a strict daily schedule that accounted for every hour of his day, from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. He even drew a map of his perfect day in his journal. But no matter how hard he tried, the order row in his little book was always full of black dots. He eventually realized that his life was too itinerant, too full of movement and new ideas, to fit into a rigid box. He was constantly traveling, meeting new people and starting new projects. His brain wanted to invent the lightning rod and the glass harmonica, not spend an hour every night putting his pens back in a straight line. After decades of trying to force himself to be orderly, Franklin finally gave up. He told a story about a neighbor who wanted to buy an axe from a blacksmith. The neighbor didn't want a regular axe. He wanted the entire surface of the metal to be as bright and shiny as the edge. The blacksmith agreed, but said the neighbor had to turn the heavy grinding stone himself. The neighbor turned the stone for hours, but the brightening happened very slowly. Eventually, the neighbor got tired and said he would just take the axe as it was. The blacksmith laughed and said, "No, keep turning. We will make it all bright, eventually." The neighbor replied, "No, I think a speckled axe is best." Franklin realized he was that neighbor. He had spent his whole life trying to make his order perfectly shiny, but the effort was costing him too much. He decided that a speckled axe, a life that was productive and happy but a little bit messy, was actually better than a perfect life.